Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Opinions expressed on the First Coast Connect Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJXT News 89.9.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler. This is First Coast Connect, and it's Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Among our topics, redistricting gets real as the governor calls for a special session. School officials agree to ask lawmakers to dial back charter expansion. A Clay County School Board member faces calls to step down after saying he has problems with 80% of all Black people. Local protesters react to the killing of a woman by ICE officers in Minneapolis. And no one will face charges for the former illegal gun registry at City Hall. To talk about all that and more, I am joined by Megan Mallicoat, education reporter at Jacksonville Today. Good morning, Megan.
Good morning, Ann.
Obi Umunna, attorney and political consultant. Good morning, Obi.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Frank Powers, former assignment manager at WJXT News4Jax. Hi, Frank.
Morning. The new year is already providing a topic-rich environment for this show.
100%. We've got a lot to talk about today. Welcome to 2026.
Yes.
We're also joined by Sean Frieder, assistant professor of political science at the University of North Florida. Hi, Sean. Welcome back.
Hi, good morning. Good to be here.
So I'm going to start with a topic that is going to affect Florida, but also this entire nation if it moves as expected. Governor Ron DeSantis Wednesday calling for a special legislative session the week of April 20th. He wants lawmakers to redraw U.S. congressional districts. This is part of a national effort, Obi. It is somewhat framed differently in Florida, simply because Florida is not allowed to redistrict for partisan reasons, unlike all of the other states that are doing so.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I think Florida passed a fair district amendment that really stopped them from wanting to redistrict for anything other than, anything against political reasons, right? And this is clear. I mean, he's trying to say different things now, but it's clear from messages from Donald Trump and from him earlier that this is a political reason for going back and trying to redistrict.
He's suggesting that they wait until until April, as opposed to, as the House seems poised to do, the State House, start talking about it here in this 60-day legislative session. The governor says, let's wait because there's an important Supreme Court decision that's going to happen that could drive this discussion. And I would guess to some extent provide political cover to say that this is a necessary redistricting, not a partisan one.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's waiting to see if he can get cover from the Supreme Court to see if he's going to be able to kind of push through. I think, what has happened in the past or what people want to happen is that this will be immediately appealed to the Florida Supreme Court, which they should say, based on the, fair district amendment, this shouldn't go forward. But we know that this particular Florida Supreme Court and the National Supreme Court has been politicized a little bit. So we're waiting to see what's going to happen.
Sean, there is something that I learned about called dummy mandering, which is this idea that gerrymandering, if taken too far, can actually backfire on the people that are doing the gerrymandering. There's only so many ways you can thin out, crack, spread out your party through a district in a way that allows you to win. But there are people in D.C. right now who are in marginal districts already. They don't love the idea of losing some of their party to a redistricting effort, and they're pushing back. I mean, there is not necessarily this unanimity in D.C. that our lawmakers from Florida want to go through a redistricting process.
This has really weird historical parallels to the 19th century. If you look at whenever states redistrict in the middle of the decade rather than when there's typically going to, when the census requires it, we haven't really seen that since the 19th century. The 20th century didn't have that. The first couple decades of this century didn't have that. And that sharing a feature that kind of is along with what you're saying, back then, that was also kind of controversial because lawmakers would find themselves maybe playing a game of musical chairs and potentially losing their own seat when they crack and pack too much. And so that's something I could see potentially happening here. Florida is already pretty heavily gerrymandered. It's hard to prove it's done for partisan reasons, but you look at a state with 28 congressional districts. You've got pretty much no competitive districts at this point. Maybe one, Jared Moskowitz in 23 is semi-competitive, but other than that, you got 20 Republican districts and 8 Democrat-leaning districts in a state that, a fair sort of balance, if we're looking at partisan registration, would maybe look something like a 17-11 or a 12-16 split. So we're way off the split already. think the goal is to bring it down to 7 or 6 Democrats. But again, there's pretty easy ways to hide that if you're trying to say there's other things like population growth that's getting you there.
Sure. I mean, the chair of the Republican Party, Frank Powers, has said he thinks that they could get as many as 5 seats out of those 8 Democratic seats, which would obviously shift that supermajority in a huge way. But the idea of an April 20th special session, people who are at the state level running in November don't love that idea of being in Tallahassee when they want to be in their districts fundraising and talking to people.
They don't. And the Supreme Court may rule as soon as today or maybe next week on what the governor is hoping will give him cover.
This Louisiana case.
Yeah. And look what happened in 2022. He personally redrew the district. And there was a challenge to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was given the choice of the governor's district or the fair district amendment that was passed in 2014. And guess which one they picked? The governor. So if there is a challenge, if this redistricting is done and there's a challenge and goes to the Florida Supreme Court, no one thinks that they'll rule against DeSantis.
Yeah. And Megan, this is one, obviously, of many states, as we mentioned. Texas already redistricted with a gain of 5 seats for Republicans. California is going through this redistricting. Missouri has done it. North Carolina, Ohio.
But
so
not Indiana.
And not Indiana, true, tellingly. And so there has been some pushback on President Trump's, initiative to get states to redistrict in order to gain seats. But as we said, Florida is not allowed to redistrict for the reasons that the president has stated.
Right. And I think it's interesting also to consider just the natural change that Florida has been through, maybe since the last census, and the change from all the people moving into the state that would also affect this change. So I would be curious to see how they would maneuver that.
Yeah. And it is, obviously a state that's seen an enormous increase in the number of GOP gains. Obi, this is a state that used to be kind of even Steven, and now there's like a 1.4 million advantage.
I think I will say those numbers are a little bit distorted because I think those are like active voters versus actual registered voters. But I there's definitely been an influx in certain parts of Florida, and then there's definitely been a registration advantage. But I still see Florida as a purplish state, which is why I think there will be some mistakes in kind of when they try to start to split up some of these votes. You can see people in Texas are a little bit worried about their redistricting because they may have mismanaged where Hispanic votes are going to go in the future. And so we'll see. I think it's a difficult. They've already done enough gerrymandering. It's going to be hard to really change seats here in Florida. I don't see them getting 5. I don't see them getting any. I see it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
And the calculus on the Latino vote is changing remarkably in the last year because of the immigration crackdown, where Republicans thought that they had taken over that block. Not anymore.
Yeah. And the economy is obviously impacting that too. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Megan Mallicoat, Sean Frieder, Frank Powers, and Obi Umunna about the week's headlines. And if you'd like to join our conversation, you can join us on air. You can give us a call at 904-549-2937, or you can go to firstcoastconnect.org and find all of the other ways to connect with us. I want to move on now to a topic, Megan, that you've been covering quite a bit. This is Schools of Hope. These are charter schools that have recently, in the last legislative session, got a big opportunity to expand their footprint into existing schools. And the Duval County School Board this week really took a stand on it.
They did, but it was a narrow stand. So
Okay.
the board has 7 members, and the vote was for this resolution and 3 against.
And remind us what the resolution was. What were they seeking to do?
Sure. So they voted to add asking for change for Schools of Hope to their legislative platform for the upcoming legislative session that starts next week. Basically, just to give them another talking point for when their lobbyists and staff in Tallahassee talk with legislators, that they can look to the platform and say, hey, this item is on here.
Does it specify how they feel about it? I mean, this list of legislative priorities will now have, I guess, 7 items.
7 items, right?
And, Schools of Hope as an idea is going to be on that list. But does it say specifically we want to stop Schools of Hope? We want to pull back on Schools of Hope?
It's not super opinionated in any way. Basically, and it's not asking to undo it completely. It's not asking to pull back all of the changes from the last session. It essentially is asking to protect school district resources, because the change that gets the most attention is that in the last session they allowed a certain handful of these charter school operators to move in to public school buildings and co-locate with buildings that have extra space. And so basically it's just asking this state lawmakers to change it and give them more control over where the schools of hope can locate, and maybe a stronger recourse to say no when they don't want them to come into a certain school.
And you noted this was a close vote, but this is still kind of a break with how this board has voted. This board typically votes as kind of a block. It's got a very conservative element and really only one or two voices that typically diverge from that. This is a kind of a baby of the conservative movement, this charter school expansion. And so what are you seeing happening politically that is getting some of those members to say it's time to slow down this expansion, or at least, change some of the policies?
Yeah, the board often has a 5-2 block, sometimes even a 6-1 block in the conservative favor. And like you said, this has been a pet project of conservatives, the Schools of Hope. However, it has caught the attention of, in this case, it was Melody Balduke, the District 7 rep, and Reggie Blunt, the District 5 rep, who voted in favor of the resolution to ask to give the district more power and say so over Schools of Hope. And they both cited their constituents asking them, that they both cited that they needed to listen to their constituents who asked for them to support these relatively small changes that they hope will have some impact to make it more of a palatable issue for all sides, that it wouldn't because the district is going to be expected to pay for operational costs when these charter schools come in. I think a lot of people are concerned that it will cost the district money that it maybe doesn't have, and
because these charters will be allowed to operate without
reimbursing. They still get the funding from the state for the students that are enrolled, but then they don't have a lot of the costs that would be associated with operating a business. I mean, we've heard it compared to everything from letting a Lowe's move into a Home Depot to one of the public commenters the other night said it was like if you had squatters move into your house and then they got to charge rent for your house. So
that's quite an analogy.
Yeah.
I do want to take a call from Eric in Arlington. Good morning, Eric. Go ahead.
Yeah, I live in over in Edgewood, and in a neighborhood that most of y'all wouldn't be caught dead in. Somebody was murdered right around the corner from my house about a month ago. There are crack houses here and so on. And my representative is John Rutherford, whose only goal seems to be further enriching billionaires and protecting pedophiles. What does that have to do with me? We've already got a mess as far as the districting goes here in Florida, and all the Republicans want to do is make it worse. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks. Appreciate the call. We also have a call from Linda in Mandarin. Are you there, Linda? No, I'm sorry, she's not. All right. I do want to talk about the Schools of Hope some more, Frank, because this is, as we said, this is a unusual.
It's called an unfunded mandate.
Well,
they want to give freebies to the charter schools, thereby taking more money away from public school districts, which is the avowed goal of the DeSantis administration and the school board.
But what is it do you think that's different about the Schools of Hope proposal that is allowing or motivating people to diverge from the game plan?
Because they can. And they know it. The charter school movement in Florida.
No, I mean the school board members. What is motivating them to break from? We're talking about two school board members that are endorsed by
constituents
Moms for Liberty. They're very conservative. Why are they hearing from their constituents now, and being motivated to change how they've traditionally viewed charter schools?
Well, it might have to do with the fights that went on for better part of a year over closing some schools. We had two in the Beaches area that were on the chopping block, now are not, maybe. You've got a couple in Arlington, and people see what's going on with public education in Florida. The enrollment continues to dwindle and going into charter schools and private schools. That affects funding, both at the state and federal level. And people who are still supportive of public education. My kids both went to Duval County schools. They got great education. They went into colleges. They both got scholarships that saved me literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. So there are successes in this school system. They don't get credit for it.
Yeah.
Well, it's an A school system now, correct? Or just recently became an A school system. But But I do think to the point of, I will say also, look at these two school board members. They're new to politics. They've never been elected to any kind of public office, and this is their first time really getting to understand what constituents will really come up to them and say. And then I think a lot of the schools are in those districts that we're considering putting these School of Hope projects in. And so I think they're finally, learning what it's like to be a public official, and you're going to get a lot of messages and comments. And I think this is good that they're actually listening.
Yeah, governing is different than running for office.
Yeah. The two final schools, though, that because the charter school operator that wants to move into Duval has removed most of its requests, and there's only two schools remaining.
Matter, right?
Matter Academy.
And you were the first to report that they had submitted, 20 some odd requests to co-locate or take over.
25. So, but they recently withdrew 23, leaving only 2 remaining, and they're actually in Tony Ricardo's district, who still voted against this resolution to add to the state thing. But I think in answer to your question of why it's caught the ire of people who might otherwise be in support of charter schools, it comes down to money, because the idea that charter schools would not have to foot the bill for operational costs has been met with a lot of opposition from even people who might otherwise support the idea of charter schools if they paid their own way.
And this is a pullback, Sean, for Duval County, the number of those requests that were initially submitted being reduced to just 2 out of the original 25. But this is not a moot issue. These are school applications that are still pending in Miami-Dade, Hillsborough, Orange County, Polk, and St. Johns County. And so this school district is joining a larger statewide push by school leaders to take it up with lawmakers and to urge them to modify this expansion.
I mean, the big vote, happened several months ago to actually push towards this. Then it's really difficult to kind of interpret these procedural votes that happen after the fact. You can't interpret them as being opposed to the original mission, but I see this as somewhat of an opportunity for damage control. You float a trial balloon a few months ago. You discover that a lot of people that you thought were on your side are actually pretty uneasy about this because it involves some of their tax dollars. You learn that you have to modify the plan. So I see them trying to kind of quietly slink this back. I'm guessing that their thought is we won't be talking about this vote in a week, a month from now, but whatever decisions they make, we will be talking about in months from now.
All right. I think we do have Linda from Mandarin now. Good morning, Linda. Go ahead.
Good morning. I always like when your shows have a bit of a theme, and this morning's theme is individuals and politicians and lobbyists that don't want to compete on a fair, level playing field. When charter schools came to Florida, they just wanted an opportunity to compete. They weren't going to take resources from public schools. That's morphed into a monster where, this in-schools thing sounds like a bit like a tick that's going to attach itself and suck the lifeblood out of the school and then end up taking it over. And then we have redistricting where people obviously don't think they can compete fairly, that they have to gerrymander even further. And that's really got a theme that these people seem a little, this is a bad word, DEI. They feel entitled to get provisions provided to them instead of what the U.S. is supposed to be about, which is plain capitalistic competition. And may the best entity or person win. We're turning into something totally different.
Linda, Thanks so much for your comments. I appreciate it. If you'd like to comment on the week's news, you can give us a call at 904-549-2937 or email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Last word on this, Megan?
So it's important to mention that late yesterday afternoon, which is after the meeting where they had this vote, but late yesterday afternoon, we did hear from the school district in Duval to say that they have told Matter no on these 2 remaining charter schools, Schools of Hope. And so it remains to be seen how that will impact. There's very little recourse that the district has, but they use basically the only provision that they have, which is that it wouldn't work because of reasons, and then the reasons that they gave for each of these 2 schools.
Is that the only applicant that has submitted an intention letter to the district, or are there other school providers?
It's the only applicant that's approved on this small list of 7 different charter operators by the state. But also remember that at any point, any of the 7 operators, including Matter, again, could come back and request this. So just because this one set of 25 seems to be off the table does not in any way mean that Schools of Hope is a non-issue.
All right. I do want to move on now to another school board issue. It is a different school board in a different county. This has to do with a meeting that last night addressed the racist social media post by a school board member in Clay County in December. And before we get into the conversation, let's hear those comments made by Roberto Alvaro. This clip also includes the voice of First Coast News reporter Sydney Dyshon. Let's take a listen.
80% more negative experience with the African American community in this country than with white people.
He went on to say he's met a lot of great African American people and is still friends with them before making more controversial comments.
Because they're good, decent people, but that's the 20% of the people I have met, the African Americans. The other 80%, they're being nasty, they're being rude, they're being problematic.
So obviously some concerning comments there. Really, initially, Obi seemed to generate a lot of concern from inside the Republican Party. He's a Republican, although, nominally nonpartisan as a school board member.
Right.
This was a Facebook Live that he did making these comments. And, he kind of initially apologized, but has sort of retrenched a little bit since then.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at his comments and what I was surprised at was the kind of Republicans and Democrats were both really coming out and saying that this is reprehensible and that he needed to either resign. Since then, he has apologized. He didn't apologize right away, but it happened after a little bit of pushback, and now he's hired a lawyer to kind of make sure to help him kind of stay in office. I think one of the bigger things is, as a school board member, his position, to know that he has these views on Black people can affect all of the things that he's going to vote on at some point. And I think that is what people are upset about, is he's someone who is supposed to be representing them in a whole, but he has these views that are reprehensible, and who knows how that is actually going into his decision making.
Sean, this is also, in addition to how it might impact his decision making, obviously impacts the people who work and attend school in that district. Clay County has a student population that's about 17% Black, but also tons of employees that are Black that are working for this school board and for this school district. What is the sense of how they're responding, reacting, the community at large? We know that a lot of people went to this meeting last night.
And I think to a certain extent, their response has actually been remarkably measured compared to the kind of extreme statement that he's made. There's been calls for him to think about his words more carefully. There's, of course, been calls to resign, which I think is completely appropriate. It's very difficult to get something like that to happen. They've said call for a vote of no confidence. That's about what they're limited to, and we'll see if that happens. But, I mean, I think the remarkable part of this story is, in two steps, that one, typically 20 years ago, you would not, as an unforced error, say any of these things out loud on Facebook Live to begin with. And two, I mean, I think the lawyer, once he hired that, the statement coming from the lawyer in terms of what the new defense is now is very telling. First, you get kind of a half-hearted apology. Then you get a statement where the lawyer is talking about this being, radical Democratic leftists trying to suppress his First Amendment rights to speech. This is someone that sort of ran on a campaign of keeping politics out of school, and now he's attracting heavy political attention to his own position on the school board. So I think it's a remarkable telling of just kind of what we generally are at this point in politics in this country, where people kind of feel like they can say the thing that they want to say out loud and face no repercussions. And then if they actually get in trouble for it, they go fully on the offensive rather than trying to apologize their way out of it.
It's worth noting he did at one point say, the comments I made are wrong and offensive. I regret them and I apologize, and I'm taking the time to reflect. But as you know, he has since hired Lake County Attorney Anthony Sabatini, who a lot of us will remember was a former state representative who had a very
contentious,
thank you, term, because people were asking him to step down because of reports that he'd attended parties in blackface, and then attended parties in brownface, and then hosted CEOs and office hose parties. I mean, he had a lot of objectionable things in his past that caused people to ask him to step down. He most recently about this case said, quote, "No one cares. Cancel culture died November 5th, 2024. And then in reference to the January 21st meeting that he was summoned to by the Commissioner of Education, said he'll be at the beach that day.
Well, Mr. Alvaro said he was reflecting. Now we see what he's reflecting about. He said it was not his intention to come out with those things. Okay. What was your intention? To support Nick Fuentes?
Well, explain the Nick Fuentes reference. First of all, remind us who he is, and second of all, why you're talking about him right now.
Well, Nick Fuentes is the white nationalist who famously had dinner at the White House and espouses racist goals for America. And again, what Sean said is,
And he was mentioned, we should say, in
Right.
this Facebook Live.
Oh, and made things worse, as a matter of fact. Yes, well, I can see where Nick Fuentes is coming from, and that was ... We're all racists. I'm sorry, you can call yourself a racist, but don't project that on everybody else. Reality, what's going to happen here? Nothing. They can do the vote of no confidence, but the only person who can remove an elected official is the governor, failing a recall petition, and he just got elected, so he's going to be there for a while unless he gets fed up with the uproar and just says, I'm out of here, and resigns.
So, Megan, last night, this meeting of the Clay County School Board, they sort of cleared their agenda in order to hear these comments. It was a couple hours long of these comments. You know, initially when this happened, we heard very strong comments of condemnation from elected officials. Senator Jennifer Bradley saying the comments were unfitting of his position, beyond the pale, and he should resign. The executive board, the Clay County Republican Executive Board, said that he should step down immediately. And even the school board chair, Aaron Skipper, had said that he should step down. Sam Garrison, who is the House Speaker designate here, also from Clay County. So we heard a lot of people calling for that. But to Frank's point, they don't have the power to remove him.
No, they don't. And this has come up just in the hypothetical for Duval when they were talking about some policy changes last year. And this is a good example of why that was on the a topic of discussion, is that school board members aren't traditional employees in that they don't have the right to be able to like police themselves or to fire each other. It's completely up to the state level, or like a resignation. But I think that the point here is not necessarily that with the free speech, which is also a huge topic in Florida right now.
Sure.
In fact, this Clay County board will be asked to vote on an employee's Charlie Kirk remarks soon, I think, because the employee in Clay County was one of the first to catch state attention for the remarks that she made about Charlie Kirk's death. And so that's a free speech defense, right? But there's a difference between an employee who has violated a policy and a elected official who has lost the confidence of his constituents. Right? So it will certainly be interesting to see how he responds to this. But yeah, it's basically either in his hands to resign or the state to remove him.
And do we know if he has any obligation? I mean, he says he doesn't, to go to this meeting of the Department of Education. He was summoned there by the Commissioner of Education, and who also had some very strong things to say, saying, I'm directing you to attend the school board of education meeting on January 21st to explain your conduct. I can only pray that the children of Clay County have been protected from your discriminatory content. So, the call was
It's not a subpoena.
Yeah, but it is a demand.
Yep.
Is he allowed to just go to the beach?
Yes, he doesn't have to go.
Mhm.
I don't know that the Florida School Board has the power to issue subpoenas, but if he blows them off, that will not endear him to them. And as we know, the school board is loaded with DeSantis appointees, so that could go up the ladder.
Mm-hmm. We just have a message from Tom on Facebook saying, don't forget Tony Ricardo's hateful and homophobic Facebook post prior to his election to the school board. Tony Ricardo is a school board member in Duval County. Megan, that's something you reported on.
Yes, he had a long list of Facebook posts that were along these same types of lines. I mean, nothing this specific perhaps, but it also caught the attention of the voters in Duval County. However, this was before he was elected, and the voters still chose him to be their representative. So perhaps it's slightly different in that way, that in this case, the voters have already selected Clay County representative, and now he's come out with this.
Social media was not an improvement on the human condition.
Yeah, that's true. Sean, do you see any political trend, anything that we can glean from this incident about just the overall political dynamics in Florida?
I mean, I think it's not just Florida. I think it's United States, and we're about to, I think, talk about what happened in Minnesota. I mean, I think if we're looking at the responses that the president, that the DHS secretary had to that, and we'll talk about that in a second. We're just seeing a general pattern right now of there used to be an instinct to not say the thing out loud that you're maybe thinking, and I think that instinct has gone away. And I think that people are leaning into fight first rather than apologize. And I mean, that's been Trump's slogan for his entire career, and I think that what's happened nationally is kind of seeped down into the state and local levels. I think not just here, but everywhere.
I mean, I want to push back on that a little bit. I feel like, the things that this person is expressing about finding fault with 80% of Black people
Yes.
is not probably something that is top of mind for most people.
No.
So is this mood engendering, kind of additional thoughts that are negative? Is it pushing a narrative that isn't necessarily an unspoken accepted narrative, but truly a new kind of more hardline racist narrative?
Well, I think it's the kind of person that you're encouraging in many cases to now have a political career compared to who that person would have been 10 or 20 years ago. You are now sending a signal for the past 10 years that if you have views that are a bit more out there, if you have views that are explicitly racist, you might be able to fight battles and maybe not win them, but at least have the dust settle, have your 3 years remaining on the board continue. Whereas, 10, 20 years ago, I feel like this would have been an easy case. This guy would be gone in 48 hours.
Right. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the big headlines of the week, and you can join our conversation by giving us a call at 904-549-2937 or emailing firstcoastconnect@wjct.org with comments or questions. I do want to move on now, as Sean said, to the topic of ICE protests. We know that we had a significant, sizable protest here last night. This is in reaction to the killing this week in Minneapolis of Renee Good, a mother of 3. Federal officials have said she was trying to kill an ICE officer with her car or run him over, and shot and killed her. So, Obi, first of all, was the size of the turnout, which was, several dozen people last night here on the steps of the federal courthouse, significant, telling, meaningful to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was that protest, but there was protests around the country. But the ones here was a significant amount of people, and there was also some other marches around town as well. I think it's a response to not just the incident and the murder of this young lady, but it's also to the cover up, is also bringing a reaction. I think what you're seeing is that the government is telling people that they're seeing something that they did not see with their own eyes, and I think people are reacting to that as well.
I want to ask you, as an attorney, to explain to us a little bit about the idea that this investigation is not going to include state officials in Minnesota, that it is going to be basically run by the FBI and federal investigators. What is the precedent for that? How unusual is it for state officials to be shut out of a homicide investigation?
That's extremely unique. If you look at the Charlie Kirk situation, state officials and FBI work together. That is usually how this is done. This is rare that this is happening in this particular sense, that they're not working together. The FBI does not have kind of the local kind of resources as well as normally to come in. They're usually parachuted in. And so this is a unique situation that is not normally happen, and also giving people more reason to be upset. They feel like this is a way to hide kind of what is going on. It is clear that Minnesota's kind of political infrastructure, does not want ICE there in the first place. And so I think it is clear that they're not going to be included in this investigation. And I think that's going to really cause people to really look at this investigation to see if it's legitimate or not.
Sean, this is, so far, as Obi says, this is an issue that is in this city and in this state, which is governed by Democratic officials. There's been a lot of pushback on just the presence of ICE and this massive enforcement effort that's been happening there with some 2,000 agents. But it is not necessarily something that we've seen in Republican-led cities to that extent. New Orleans, I guess, possibly being an exception there.
The governor invited them there.
Right. But do you see as this effort to kind of boost the number of people who are not here legally deported, do you see this spreading? Do you see this becoming something that Republican officials might have to grapple with more?
I mean, I think that's the trend. First of all, you see that more in Democratic cities just because of the number of cities that are Democratic. I mean, by definition, it's going to be easier to put troops in Democratic cities just because that's the high volume of them. But I do think this is also a targeted effort. I mean, if you're going to put this many people this quickly into these situations, you're going to expect at some point there's going to be an error rate. Something's going to break. That's just going to happen. You have to start with that assumption, which is why you don't move fast in the first place. And again, kind of a new ethos over the past 15, 20 years in government and tech and beyond is move fast and break things. And I'm kind of amazed to a certain extent that it took this long to have some sort of fatality with thousands of people being brought into different cities. We saw action, not quite the same thing, but another similar incident in Portland last night. So, you know, I'm not surprised to see this. I'm surprised it took this long to get 2 in a row.
Right.
There are things that Minnesota can do. Now, the FBI said they're not going to cooperate. They're not going to share any of their investigative findings. But the DA in Minneapolis can certainly present a case to a grand jury. And it's also been noted that if there's going to be a murder charge, there's no statute of limitations on murder. When there's a new administration, that officer can be charged then. So there are things that can happen.
Could also be preliminarily, proactively pardoned, which is something that's happened as well, although that's more of a federal.
Not on a state charge.
Right.
Right.
So far.
So far.
Okay.
Training has become an issue on this too, because you're seeing that, and I stay in contact with law enforcement, both those who are retired and still, and they are appalled at what has happened to ICE. A lot of veteran ICE agents, and this guy was one, 10-year veteran, have gotten out because they don't like being the evil empire. And there was a report the other day about how all these recruits who are being literally pulled out of gun shows with a $50,000 bonus check and sent up to FLETC in Brunswick, and they're washing out by the hundreds.
And FLETC's the training center for law enforcement up there for federal law enforcement. We got a call from Tom on the west side. Good morning, Tom. Go ahead.
Good morning. I just wanted to say, in my opinion, this is a direct result of the climate of fear that the Homeland Security and ICE have created. I think this woman who was cooperating for the first part of the video just panicked when the guy just yanked violently at her door and was cursing at her and didn't see the man in front of her. And now we have this tragedy. It's sad indeed.
Thanks, Tom. Megan, to his point, and to Frank's as well, if ICE agents are moving into these places, perhaps without the training, these are also encounters that ordinary community members are not really accustomed to dealing with. Sure. I have a lot of friends in Minneapolis who've been surprised at how omnipresent the ICE agents have been, how disruptive to their lives, just kind of getting to work, driving around, whether they work at a medical facility or anywhere else. There's been impacts in ways that communities, I think, are continually surprised by when there is something like this happening, and they don't really have the training to respond either.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, for somebody like the woman in this case, we don't know, Obi, if she was a trained, involved. We know that she was supposedly
a legal
there.
observer is what they're calling
A legal observer. I'm not sure I really even know what the definition of
what
that
means. Yeah, I mean, I think there a lot of times when you have protests, there's people that are just there to just kind of watch and make sure, and we call them here in Florida, I think they're kind of like, we call them peacekeepers, or people that are kind of, not necessarily part of the protest, but kind of trying to make sure that they don't spiral out of control. And, to me, there are trained people and there are untrained people in this incident. And it seems like the people that were supposed to be trained are the ones that acted kind of irrationally here. And it's a shame that we are at this point, but I do think it has a lot to go with training. They're only trained for much less time than it
half
looks
the
like,
time, according to the report today on NPR.
And I think you're asking for problems when you are allowing people untrained to go into these environments and do this type of thing. And I think it's unfortunate, and I think it is a bigger sign of the problem that we're having with this government is, as Sean stated too, that we're not willing to take the proper time to do things correctly.
We got an email from AP saying, if possible, could you comment on the fact that your panel referred to the events with Charlie Kirk as a situation or a killing? And then when you spoke about the individual in Minneapolis, it was referred to as a murder. Was Charlie Kirk's death not also a murder? And I didn't catch that. I mean, it certainly was a homicide. I don't know that there's been any definition that this was a murder in Minneapolis. But yes, I mean, obviously Charlie Kirk's death was a murder, is being investigated as such. So if we said murder instead of homicide, that would be.
I think we said that they could present to a grand jury for potential murder charges.
Okay, right, sure. certainly being investigated as a possibility if a DA wanted to bring that. We've got a call from Sally in Springfield. Good morning, Sally. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. First, I just want to express my condolences to the family and friends of Ms. Good in that entire city. The entire nation actually feels this trauma. But my question is, yesterday I heard J.D. Vance say that immigration, or ICE, I'm not sure, are going to go door to door looking for people. Is this something legal for America?
Thanks, Sally. Obi, I'll turn to you since you're the attorney.
I don't think it's I think it will be challenged. I don't think it's legal. But I don't think this administration cares if it is or not. I think the job and the point is to intimidate people. I think for my constitutional lawyers out there, this is maybe a weird Amendment 3 question that may come up at some point. But
Remind us, Amendment 3.
You can't house people that are government people coming to your home
that's the weird amendment about quartering people.
Yeah, quartering people, which is for law school students, this is like a rare time that this ever comes up. But I do think there are issues with that, and I do think there are issues with going to door, also with probable cause, which those issues are still being brought up as well. So.
Frank, I want to move on now to a topic I know you've been following closely, and that's the issue of this illegal gun registry that was being kept for a time at City Hall and at the Yates Building, which houses the tax and property appraiser's office. The state attorney announced on New Year's Eve that no charges are going to be presented.
No charges. Read the 4-page disposition. And this was, you can chalk this up to well-meaning preparedness and just bad communications. The logbook was created by an unnamed Department of Public Works manager. He didn't tell the Office of General Counsel. He didn't tell anybody in the Deeg administration or in the administration of Lenny Curry, who was the mayor when this started. So he was just, at that time, the constitutional carry law had been passed, so he just wanted to make sure that City Hall and the Yates Building were safe.
And he wanted to keep names of people who might be carrying guns in case there was an emergency situation, he said.
Exactly, right.
So why did she decide that there was no charges to be filed in this case?
Because there was no intent to knowingly violate the law. The logbook was not shared or misused in any way. Mm-hmm. And they did not, Melissa Nelson's office often says, we charge what we can prove.
So this issue is dead, except for the fact
that the Attorney General, James Othmeyer, who is no fan of Donna Deegan, has said, this isn't over. Well, what does that mean? He can't charge anybody. I'm sure he would have loved to have seen Donna Deegan charged, but if that was going to happen, then Lenny Curry would have been charged. Well, that's not going to happen, and that's why a response from the Republicans on the city council has been so muted.
He says State Attorney Melissa Nelson will be hearing from my office soon. Obi, does that have any traction?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, it's clear that they have gotten rid of state attorneys when they have not liked what they've said or done. So is that possible? Yes. I don't think that is likely in this particular case. But I will go back because when this story came out and how it was framed by Republicans, is Donna went out of her way to to do this. It was clearly this was not the case. And I think what we are doing in local government, to me, is absurd, that we are trying to make every incident some kind of got you thing. It prevents us from actually getting good work done here. And I think it is clear that this was investigated and it was nothing like that at all.
Well, a good note to end on. Megan Mallicoat, Obi Umunna, Frank Powers, Sean Frieder, thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
All right, up next, finding the humor in the hot flash. We talked to the cast of Menopause the Musical.
Congaree & Pen, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpen.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Accidents can happen when you least expect it. For decades, our attorneys have dug out the facts to help juries decide who's at fault.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
Subscribe to Jacksonville's morning newsletter, Jacksonville Today. More than 50,000 of your neighbors are already receiving this free, fun, and engaging source of local info. Updates, events, voter guides come election time, and a feel-good story to brighten your day. We call it the little bit of joy. Get yours at jaxtoday.org/sign up.
On the next Florida Roundup, the president of the Regional Federal Reserve Bank, Raphael Bostic. Inflation and tariffs, immigration and the job market, interest rates and affordability. What do you want the president of the Regional Federal Reserve Bank to know about your financial situation? Email us now, radio@thefloridaroundup.org, radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then be sure to join us live Friday, noon until 1.
An ICE officer kills a woman in Minneapolis. The Trump administration justified the shooting. Minnesota officials say the agent acted recklessly. On the next Friday News Roundup, the latest from Minnesota. Also, House Republicans chart the way forward as their majority shrinks, and journalists battle a fake narrative about the January 6th insurrection 5 years on. We round up the news next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, 2025 was a breakout year for menopause, becoming the focus of influencers, pharmaceutical ads, even Congress.
I'm in menopause! Okay? And that's why I'm having this issue.
That's actor Halle Berry with lawmakers at the Capitol shouting about her own experience with menopause. Here to discuss the musical that first brought menopause into the mainstream is Kathy Merkel-Roddy, the actor playing Soap Star in Alhambra Theater's production of Menopause the Musical. Good morning, Kathy. Great to have you. We're also joined by Lisa Valdini Booth, actor playing Earth Mother. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning.
So this musical spent years as an off-Broadway hit, but it actually has its origins in Florida, which I think is great. It was an outgrowth of the Fringe Festival in Orlando before becoming this huge stage hit. What was your exposure to it before you decided that you wanted to be a part of this production?
Well, I had seen it when it toured, and the tour came through Jacksonville, and that's what I was trying to think of what year, but it's, I think, over 20 years. But it was such great fun, and I just remember laughing so much, and it stuck in my mind, that it was just a hysterical show, not only for women, but for men as well. So I remembered it from seeing the
I
tour.
wanted to ask you about that because, I think some people think, well, you would have to be of an age, which you certainly would not have been, when you're watching it, right? At that time.
Yep.
Or that you'd have to be a woman to appreciate the humor in this. Kathy, what is your sense of how it conveys to a wider audience?
Well, we all know women who are of that age. So even if you're married to one, or if you have a mom, or we all have a perspective. And so we've witnessed some of these behaviors, the impact that some of these symptoms can have on their lives. And so I think everyone can relate because it's actually something that's a shared experience in a way. And so I think it's relatable.
Anybody who's had a teenager knows puberty. This is sort of
right.
So what is it like doing this show now that, as we said, menopause has really gone mainstream? It is the focus of so much attention. It's sort of finally being acknowledged by the medical community, but it's also become this really rich, fertile territory for the world of social media, a lot of people marketing items and pharmaceutical companies. But it's a big talker these days. And so does that impact how this is received, or the way that the jokes are and the music is it relatable?
That's a good question. I don't think it really impacts the content and how people enjoy it, but I do think none of it is new news anymore. Like you said, it's become mainstream just talking about it. And, we have a song about the different drugs that different ones of us take, Paxil, St. John's wort, I'm the Earth Mother, so I do the hippie version,
Right.
But all the ways you try to address all the wide range of issues that you end up having or can have.
And we should say this is a story that follows four women that kind of really have nothing in common. They meet at a lingerie sale, but then they sort of all bond over this shared experience. And I would guess it's a lot of fun to be a part of it, ensemble.
It's a blast. Well, of course, I get the honor of working with these fabulous women who are super talented and just great human beings. But we have laughed through this process just because also it's fast moving. It's very fast moving. There's 25 songs in the show.
Wow.
And we're dancing and singing and just cutting up the entire time. So it's just a romp for sure.
That's a big book of songs to get through too. And so this opened last night, January 8th.
Our previews were yesterday, and tonight's our official gala opening.
Well, that's excellent. And it runs through February 15th at Alhambra. Are you planning anything during the performance that is different from kind of the original production? Is there anything about it that people will see and be like, that's kind of a new or a departure?
No, they did update a few things within the script, to make it a little more contemporary.
Yeah.
But it's the same group of songs, but they're all songs that everybody knows the melody, but the lyrics are all, of course, adapted to pertain to menopause, and they're just very, very funny take on all the different aspects.
Yeah. Well, it's a classic that has become very current. So congrats on the production and break a leg. It is Menopause the Musical at Alhambra Theatre. The show, as we said, runs through February 15th. And you can find info and a link on our website. Kathy Merkel-Roddy, Lisa Valdini Booth, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. And that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you missed anything, you can find all of our past and current shows at firstcoastconnect.org. And while you're there, you can sign up for our new daily newsletter, which gives you some behind-the-scenes info and an opportunity to submit questions even before the program for our guests. Don't forget to listen Saturday at 4 on What's Health Got to Do with It, when neurologist Dr. Joe Servin discusses movement as a form of medicine. First Coast Connect is produced by Stacey Bennett. Our associate producer is Isabella Casapow. Our show is directed by Brady Coram, and our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. Join us Monday when we discuss a different kind of school of hope. We get an update from artist and educator Hope McMath, who was removed from her classroom over social media posts and is suing the school district. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjax.com.